Hello, welcome to the Autism Research Coalition. This is Patricia Lemmer, and I have with us today Dr. James Adams. Hi.
Hi, Patricia.
And he's with us in Arizona, right?
That's right.
Yeah. We've known each other a long time, primarily through the Autism Research Association, that institute that Bernie Rimland founded in the 60s. And Dr. Adams got into this through his daughter, who's now almost 30, right? And it really switched gears for you, didn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah. So now you're known as the guru in autism and nutrition, and we're looking forward today to hearing about your studies. Dr. Rimland at the Autism Research Institute for years did parent surveys of getting anecdotal evidence from the parents, which he really valued, on what made their kids better and what made them worse, and then what had no effect. And when he stopped doing that, and the Autism Research Institute stopped doing that in about 2009, there were surveys of more than 27,000 patients. And I just think that what you are showing now proved parents right. As we know, the parents know their kids best. And so I'm anxious to hear, and I know our audience is anxious to hear you and not me, about what works and what doesn't work, and how you get these things into our kids to help them behave and sleep and eat and learn better. So I won't take up any more of your time. This is Dr. James Adams from the Autism Center in the Arizona State University. So thanks for being with us today.
Thanks very much, Patricia. So what I want to do is go ahead and share with you results of several studies that we did looking at nutritional status and metabolic status of children and adults with autism, and the effect of vitamin mineral supplements on those. And we've done a lot of work to measure vitamin and mineral levels and to try to optimize those, because we found they're very beneficial for many children and adults with autism. So just briefly, I direct the Autism Asperger's Research Program at ASU, Arizona State University. I'm also the president of a nonprofit, the Autism Nutrition Research Center. And that nonprofit distributes a vitamin mineral supplement based on our research. But I don't receive any salary or royalties from them. I just work as a volunteer for them. I've also been the president of the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix for over 20 years, and president of a new company, Autism Diagnostics, because we're developing tests to try to diagnose autism based on blood work and abnormalities there. As Patty mentioned, I've been a long supporter of the Autism Research Institute for many years. I've been the co-leader of the Science Advisory Committee for ARI. And really, Bernie Rimland, with his pioneering work on B6 and magnesium and other vitamins, really was an inspiration for me. He's really my hero and role model as we try to continue some of the pioneering work that he did. But in addition to treating autism, we also try to do work on preventing autism. So I co-founded a nonprofit, the Neurological Health Foundation, to look at ways to help women have healthier pregnancies and healthier babies. We now know that getting enough enough folinic acid and enough vitamin B12 and iron are very important during pregnancy and can reduce the risk of autism by almost half. I'm also the consultant for a company, Finch Therapeutics, that is working on microbiota transplant therapies. And as Patty mentioned, what drives me in all this is I have an adult daughter with autism. I've worked in a lot of different areas of nutrition. We've looked at vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, amino acids, ribose, and diet. Today, I'm going to focus on vitamins and minerals. We also look at the effect of those on metabolism, on glutathione, methylation, sulfation, oxidative stress, and the effect of all that on mitochondrial functioning, which is often a problem in autism. And so we'll talk today about the importance of ATP and carnitine and CoQ10. We've done other studies showing that toxic metals are a major problem in kids with autism. We did a major treatment study to remove toxic metals, showing it's beneficial. We've been doing a lot of work on GI treatments, focused on microbiota transplant, and also customized probiotics with Sun Genomics. We've done several studies on seizures and also on vocational issues as well. So what I want to talk about today is review briefly some past vitamin mineral research on autism. I'll mention some of our early studies. I'll focus on our 3-month vitamin mineral study where we went into great detail on a very large study to really understand what was abnormal and what treatments were needed. And then I'll follow up with a brief summary of our 12-month comprehensive nutrition and diet study. So very briefly, by definition, a vitamin or a mineral is a substance that is essential for human life. Without it, you will have disease or even death. Most people in the US consume less than the RDA of 1 or more vitamins or minerals. For example, many women lack enough calcium or iron, leading to osteoporosis and anemia. So even though we've known about the importance of vitamins and minerals for 100 years or more, still many Americans are not getting a good enough diet, and especially children with autism who consume a narrow range of foods, and especially if that does not include a range of vegetables, fruits, and protein sources, then they're at high risk of nutritional deficiencies. So vitamins and minerals are very, very important for those. As Patricia mentioned, ARI surveyed 27,000 families and found that a range of vitamins and minerals were very often helpful and very rarely harmful, unlike many psychiatric medications, which had much higher rates of adverse effects. There have been over 20 studies on high-dose vitamin B6 and magnesium, sometimes 500 to 1,000 times the RDA, so very high dose. 12 of those studies were double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. This is one of the most well-studied treatments for autism. Almost all of the studies have found that a substantial fraction of children and adults with autism benefit from high-dose vitamin B6 and with some magnesium. The reason is vitamin B6 is needed for over 100 enzymatic reactions in the body, including making many of your major neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, and also for glutathione, which is very important for detoxification and oxidative stress. And magnesium is given to prevent hyperactivity. If you gave just B6 by itself, some children develop hyperactivity. We don't fully understand why children with autism need B6. Some have poor diet and just need more. Some seem to have a problem with converting it to the active form. And also, there's probably some enzymes which are defective and need higher amounts of these cofactors in order for the enzyme to function properly. So just some people have variations in their enzymes, so they just need more of certain cofactors like vitamins and minerals. So there's been a recommended dosage for many years of very high amounts. We'll be talking in our study about using moderate or lower doses, which also seem to work well. So I'll begin with a study we published 17 years ago in which we used a commercial supplement, spectrum support. We did a 3-month study of it. It was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. We started at a low dose, gradually increased it over 2 months, and then held it constant. We had the parents rate the changes. This is our first study. It was a small study of only 20 children, but it was enough to see significant benefits. So we use a very simple 7-point scale, and I'll refer to this for several of our studies. I'm just asking the parents, did the child get much worse to much better on many different items? And what we see is that with 4 is normal and 5 is slightly better, we see that the placebo led to a little bit of improvement in social ability and expressive language and receptive language. But what's important is the supplement did better in every category, especially in improving sleep and GI function. And so these were statistically significant improvements and led us to believe that we were on the right track, that vitamins and minerals are important for many children with autism. So we then did 2 small pilot studies experimenting with different formulations to fine-tune the formulation. We basically worked with a broad spectrum vitamin mineral supplement with sulfate, because that's an important mineral which most children with autism are quite low in, and also giving CoQ10 for mitochondrial support, and high doses of B6 and magnesium. Not mega doses at 1,000 times the RDA, but going to about 20 to 40 times the RDA. And what we found from these pilot studies is that our vitamin mineral supplement was well absorbed. It improved a nutritional status in a number of ways. And we used that data to then tweak the formulation and improve it. With that improved formulation, we then did a much larger study. This is one of the largest autism treatment studies to date, with 141 children and adults enrolled. We published this in 2 papers. The first paper focused on the nutritional and metabolic status of the children compared to typical children before we treated them. And then we looked at the effect of 3 months of treatment. So we published these 2 papers. There are references here. We had many people collaborating on this. It's a very major study, several physicians and biochemists and other study staff. It was funded by ARI. And we want to thank many people and companies that helped us with testing, and Yasu that helped with producing the vitamin mineral supplement for us at that time. This is the detailed formulation. Basically, it contains almost all vitamins and minerals, often at pretty substantial levels. I don't have time to go through all of these, but briefly, some of the major features are relatively high dose of vitamin B6, B12, and folinic acid rather than folic acid, because we knew that children with autism don't convert folic acid to the active form very well. Choline, which is a special B vitamin, not commonly in most vitamin supplements. People only recently learned of the importance. Vitamin C at high doses. Calcium, but children who are on dairy-free diets may need more. We did not include copper because there's some limited evidence, as we found, that most children with autism don't need it, and a few have too many. We don't give iron because iron, you have to be careful with. Too much iron can be a problem, but also too little iron can be a problem. So we recommend everyone have their iron level tested, especially young children and girls once they've hit puberty and have regular menstrual cycles. We include lithium because previous studies and this study found that children with autism are low in lithium. They're not getting enough from their diet, or they're not absorbing it, and that seems to help. And then CoQ10 for mitochondrial support, and acetylcysteine to help produce glutathione. It's a building block for glutathione. And MSM because that's a major source of sulfate, and about 90% of kids with autism have very low sulfate. So our study design was first to measure the nutritional status of these children. We made sure they were not taking any vitamin or mineral supplements in the 2 months prior to the study. We assessed their severity. We then slowly increased the dose over the first 3 weeks. Because this is a pretty potent formula, we need to give the body time to adjust. And then we held it constant. And we remeasured the nutritional status and the autism severity. Once we had all the data, then we broke the code to see who was in the real treatment group, who was not. Our study included 55 children with autism and 44 typical children who we did extensive blood work on. And then we also enrolled another 88 children and adults with autism who were from around the country. So we didn't do blood tests on them, but we collected behavioral assessments. So as I mentioned, this is one of the largest, most comprehensive nutritional studies done for children with autism. We measured many biomarkers, spent a lot of money on vitamins, minerals, several biomarkers for those, amino acids, which are basically your measure of your protein intake and digestion, oxidative stress, glutathione, methylation, neurotransmitters, ATP, the major energy source for the body, toxic metals, and porphyrins. And the flow chart here, we started with 141 children and adults with autism. We randomly assigned them to treatment of placebo group. Most of them finished treatment. We had a few dropouts in the treatment group and the placebo group. Some of these, a couple of them were on psych meds that changed. One had an appendectomy. One had pre-existing GI problems. They just continued, so they had to drop out. Only 2 had adverse effects from the vitamin mineral supplement that caused some behavioral issues, and 1 had some nausea. Occasionally, we've seen that some children just can't tolerate any level of a vitamin mineral supplement. Interestingly, we had 1 child whose parent misunderstood the dosing recommendation. So they gave 10 times the dosage that we recommended. And when the parent contacted us for more, we said, we discovered the problem. And it turned out the child was doing just great. So the parent was very disappointed to hear we had to drop them from the study because they'd given 10 times the dosage. So again, just inadvertently, it shows how safe this treatment is. And so if we look at the vitamin levels, we found that most vitamin levels were similar in kids with autism versus controls on average. But realize many controls don't have healthy diets either. Many typical kids aren't getting enough. We found the supplement was able to significantly improve a number of vitamins. We found the kids with autism were especially low in biotin, and I'll come back to that. And after treatment, that improved. We found they were very low in vitamin B5, and that improved. We found they were low in vitamin E, and that improved. We found they were low in carotenoids, which relate to vitamin A, and that improved as well. And vitamin C also boosted quite a bit. So overall, many good improvements in vitamins. Clearly, it was well absorbed. And it's just a chart that shows this, normalizing everything to the typical kids in blue. The red is where the kids with autism started, and the yellow is where they ended. So we saw lots of improvements in the yellow group. These 2 markers at the end are, if they're high, it indicates you have a low level of vitamins. So these were higher at the start, and after treatment, they dropped down, showing the kids were getting enough of those 2 key nutrients. We also measured the active form of vitamin B6 and found that some children were just not able to convert vitamin B6 into the active form P5P, and that was why some of them seemed to benefit from these high dosages. For vitamin D, we found that the kids with autism and the typical kids tended to have marginal levels of vitamin D. We gave the RDA. At the time, I didn't know enough about vitamin D. I was surprised to see it didn't change. We now know that you need to give much, much more than the RDA to have a significant change in vitamin D levels. So now the newest formulation has much higher levels of vitamin D, which is what people need. I mentioned FIGLU is a biomarker for folate, and at the start of the study, it was high, indicating kids with autism needed more folate. And at the end of the study, it was lower, showing they were getting enough folate from the supplement. And MMA is a marker for vitamin B12. At the start of the study, some kids needed more. At the end of the study, it indicated they were getting plenty. So again, these indirect biomarkers also showed the supplement was improving biochemistry. When we look at minerals, you have to be careful because minerals, when you measure them in blood, the body tries very carefully to keep blood levels constant. So you might have a constant level of calcium, even if you're not getting enough, because your body will rob calcium from your bones. So just be aware we have to be cautious in interpreting these levels. But some of the major finding is that, as we found in a previous study of mothers of kids with autism and children, we found that in that study they were low in lithium, and we again found in this study they were low in lithium. And low lithium is associated with a wide range of psychiatric disorders and seems to be a risk factor for autism. Iodine levels on average were normal, but about 25% of kids with autism had low levels. Iodine is very important for normal thyroid function and for normal IQ. About 9% of the general population has a thyroid problem. So again, every child with autism, especially if they seem to have low energy or if they're lethargic, then they should be getting their iodine levels checked. Or if you're not using iodinized salt, you should be, but many people don't, then you need to get iodine. Iron, you have to be cautious with. Iron levels on average were normal, but again, a few kids need more. And we did have an unusual finding that RBC iron measured in the RBC, was high, unusually high in children with autism, and that seems to be a biomarker as a problem for that. And the supplement normalized it. In terms of other essential minerals, there were slightly higher levels of potassium, phosphorus, copper, magnesium, and boron, and the supplement improved iodine levels, magnesium, molybdenum, selenium, and it normalized levels of magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. So overall, looking very good there on both vitamins and minerals. This is just a figure showing this. At the start, the children with autism had very low lithium levels, and the supplement boosted them quite a bit. In fact, it was absorbed better than we thought. So in our new formulation, we're giving a lower dosage. So moving on, we also measured ATP, which is the body's main fuel for the muscles in the body and also for the brain. We found that children with autism have low levels of ATP, and that's a major problem. This means they're running on empty. And we found that after supplementing them, their levels normalized. And so this is very important. The reason is that niacin is a very important B vitamin, which is converted to the active form NADH and NADPH. And that in turn is very important for the production of ATP by the mitochondria. And so we found that kids with autism had very low levels of NADH and NADPH, and after treatment with high amounts of niacin, it normalized. So it was very exciting to see. They had normal levels of CoQ10, but the amount of CoQ10 we gave them was enough to double their levels, again, to overall try to improve mitochondrial functioning. So these are all powerful biomarkers that there were problems with mitochondrial functioning and that the supplement was improving those. As I mentioned, ATP is the major energy source for the body, for the muscles, the brain, many biochemical reactions. ATP is recycled by the mitochondrial factories in every cell. About 40% of kids with autism have a mitochondrial problem. Many have low muscle tone. And so this seems to be a major issue. And so this is just a picture of everyone, of a typical human cell with a nucleus. And these are the mitochondria. And there are many mitochondria inside almost every cell in your body. So almost every cell in your body needs to be able to produce ATP. And the supplement seems to significantly improve that. There are also, as I mentioned, one of the biggest problems in autism is almost all the kids with autism have very low levels of sulfate, both the free sulfate and the sulfate that is bound to other molecules. And our supplement significantly improved that, but it didn't quite normalize it. So that's why we now recommend also doing Epsom salt baths, because Epsom salt baths contain magnesium sulfate, and that's a great source for sulfate. We also looked at methylation, and so uridine is a very important biomarker for methylation. It was very high at the start of the study, and it improved afterwards. Glutathione was low in kids with autism at the start of the study, and it normalized after treatment. They had more oxidized glutathione, so it wasn't recycling properly, and after treatment it improved. So if you look at the ratio of reduced to oxidized glutathione, it improved quite a bit. Nitrotyrosine is another marker of oxidative stress, much higher in kids with autism, and after treatment, it normalized. So again, blue are the controls, red are the kids with autism before we treat them, yellow is the levels after we treat them. So in a little bit more detail, sulfate is the third most common mineral in your body. You need it for many things, including detoxification, deactivating neurotransmitters, and lubricating the GI tract. It is quite low at the start of the study, and it improved greatly, but didn't quite normalize. So we think kids with autism will need magnesium sulfate bath 2 to 3 times a week, along with a little bit of baking soda to improve absorption. We found that low sulfate was associated with more severe autism. And the reason what's going on here is that plasma sulfate is low because the kidneys aren't working well and sulfate is being lost in the urine. So kids with autism are dumping high amounts of sulfate in the urine, leaving an insufficient amount in their body. Several studies on this. I'm going to skip over it. I'll just say it's needed to detoxify many things from Tylenol on. Many studies showing the importance of sulfate. Methylation, Jill James has done a lot of work showing that even a small decrease in methylation is very, very significant. The body tries to regulate that very tightly. And so methylation is needed to improve proper methylation of the DNA and RNA, as well as many proteins, phospholipids, and neurotransmitters in the body. And the supplement was able to normalize that, normalize SAH, and uridine, which is a marker of insufficient methylation, greatly improved after treatment. Glutathione and oxidative stress. I mentioned glutathione is the main defense against toxic metals, and it's one of the most important antioxidants in the body. At the start of the study, kids had low amounts of the active form and high amounts of the inactive form. After treatment, it was much better. So the ratio went from very abnormal to near normal. 0% would be normal. Again, another biomarker of oxidative stress, just greatly, greatly improved. So bottom line is kids with autism have high oxidative stress. The best antioxidants are vitamins and minerals. And part of the reason for this is that glutathione is the major antioxidant in the body. And in order to recycle glutathione from the oxidized form to the active form, you need NADH. And remember I mentioned kids with autism are low in NADH, the active form of vitamin B3. So by giving them extra vitamin B3, we could then improve glutathione, get that recycled more properly, and hence help reduce oxidative stress. We also looked at amino acids. Basically, when you eat protein, your body breaks large protein molecules up into small individual amino acids and then reassembles them from many parts of your body, many hormones, many neurotransmitters, and many other things. Biggest difference we found is that kids with autism had very low tryptophan, which is needed to make serotonin, and also then goes on to make melatonin, which is important for regulating sleep. And we found that the supplement improved that to near normal levels. We also found low levels of phenylalanine and tyrosine. Phenylalanine is converted to tyrosine, converted to dopamine, again, a major neurotransmitter. And our supplement helped normalize the levels of phenylalanine and tyrosine. It's very interesting. It probably means that the vitamins were helping improve digestion or improve absorption of amino acids from protein. Also, we look at some non-essential amino acids. One of these of importance is taurine. Taurine may be low because you need vitamin B6 to convert cysteine to taurine. And taurine has long been considered important for helping many functions in the body, making bile acids for digestion, for antioxidant function, for calcium signaling, for heart function, muscle, retina, and central nervous system functioning. And basically taurine levels normalized after treatment. We then did a regression analysis to see which of these many measurements correlated with autism severity. And if we had an R-squared of 1, that means we totally could explain exact autism severity of each child based on that biomarker. No biomarker is that good, but the toxic metals accounted for about 40% of autism severity. Abnormal vitamins, again, accounted for about 25 to 57% of autism severity. Minerals accounted for 22 to 38% of severity. Amino acids, 18 to 39% of severity. Sulfate, glutathione, about 20%, and ATP, about 20%. So each one of these is important. We want to get them right. I don't have time to give all the details on our neurotransmitter measurements, but basically we measured levels of all the major neurotransmitters: serotonin, norepinephrine, epinephrine, acetylcholine, and GABA. All of these were low, quite low in children with autism, and after treatment, it normalized. Now, dopamine is a little unusual. Some kids with autism had low dopamine because of that problem I mentioned, not having enough of certain amino acids. But also some had high dopamine because it was not able to be converted properly to norepinephrine and epinephrine. So they had a double problem with dopamine. And what was so exciting is that we know the biochemistry of these very well. We know vitamin B6 and several other vitamins like vitamin C are needed to produce these neurotransmitters. Our supplement dramatically improved and normalized every one of these neurotransmitters that I list here. That's very, very exciting. So you can take a psychiatric medication which will artificially alter your neurotransmitter level, or you can take a vitamin mineral supplement to help your body make its own. The difference is the vitamin mineral supplements generally have much lower adverse effects because it's what your body needs in order to produce those vitamins. So we really believe, and Bernie Rimland believed this until his dying day, that in general, nutritional supplements are where we should start for these kids. Just his feedback from his 27,000 families reported to him, they're just so often very helpful for many children with autism. So to summarize the biochemistry of our study, before we get into the behavior, if I was too confusing, I'll just summarize it briefly, that we found many abnormalities in autism in terms of vitamins, certain minerals, glutathione, methylation, oxidative stress, sulfation, and neurotransmitters. Each one of these abnormalities is associated with worse autism. And the supplements seem to improve or normalize almost every one of these. It was just amazing to me how well it did, far beyond our expectations. But based on this, we also learned that we needed to tweak the formulation to improve it more. And I'll talk about that. But I also want to talk very importantly about the behavior, because in this study, we also measured behavioral improvements in 141 children and adults with autism. We did find significant improvement on a parent global impressions measure, and there was some improvement in the other measures, but it wasn't statistically significant. The PGI is more sensitive because it actually asks the parents to assess the change rather than the absolute severity of a child. So it may be hard for you as a parent to say, what's the absolute severity of your child's autism scale of 1 to 10? Is it 7? Is it 6? But it's pretty easy for parents, we found, to say after 3 months, is the child doing better or worse in certain symptoms? So here's the data. So we measured many different symptoms, and a 0 means no change, a 1 means slightly better, a 2 means better, and the scale goes negative as well. So blue is the placebo group, and placebo, this is why we do placebo-controlled studies. With the placebo, people thought there was some improvement in expressive language and receptive language and play and other areas. But the red is the treatment group, and on every measure, the treatment group did better on every one of these measures, and in certain measures, the difference was large enough to be statistically significant. So we can say that the supplement improved receptive language. It had significant improvements in hyperactivity, in tantruming, in overall autism, and if we average across every symptom, The treatment group did twice as well as a placebo group. So overall, very great to see these improvements. Not every child improved, but basically a third had no change, a third had some modest improvements, and a third really took off and did quite well. We also looked at it as a function of age. We found a slight tendency the younger children did slightly better on average, but really up until about 20, good improvement. And even the adults had some improvement, just not as much as the children. And we think that was because we were underdosing the adults. So now we've changed our dosage strategies to give more for the adults, and that seems to be working better based on our latest survey data. So who improved the most? Can we predict which children are going to improve the most from a vitamin mineral supplement? And it turns out, yes, we can. The children who had lowest levels of vitamin K and lowest levels of biotin improved the most. And what's interesting is these two vitamins have very different functions in the body. What they have in common is they're produced by your beneficial gut bacteria, which produce about half of your dietary intake. And so if we look at these two together, just by measuring those two alone, we can predict pretty well who's going to be improving. And so that's why, as I mentioned, biotin was the vitamin which was lowest in children with autism on average, and it improved a lot from our study. And as a function of this study, we've now even increased the amount of biotin in the supplement. And I want to share with you one brief case study, because families seem to understand better when we explain a case study. Now, this is one of our most remarkable participants, but we had a number of other children who also did very well like this. So this is little Ricky at age 16 months. He started our study at age 4.5, but basically he was developing normally until about 1 year, and then he began regressing. And he was diagnosed with autism at 26 months. Parents immediately started a GFCF diet, and he started HAB and therapies in preschool, but those weren't helping very much. So at age 4.5, he started our study. Within 11 days, he had an increased energy level and is beginning to have more echolalia, beginning to practice language more. Within 18 days, he had the first formed stool of his life, and he was beginning to eat a wider variety of foods. By day 25, he was initiating social interaction. And I think you understand how important that is, to begin initiating and wanting to be with other people, and began more expressive language. Day 32, he began asking questions. And day 40, and this is a child who's age 4.5, he began wanting to be out of a wet diaper. At day 54, he began speaking in complete sentences and spontaneously engaging in interactive and imaginative play. Everything I'm saying here is direct quotes from his mother. Day 68, he was spontaneously learning new words, initiating conversations. He was dry all day. He was playing with toys. He was willing to shift from watching TV to engaging in games with family members. By day 76, he was toilet trained, and he had great appetite, great energy level. He was beginning to have conversations with his stuffed animals. He began to prefer to interact with people versus TV. He began understanding pronouns and using the I word, and his fine motor function improved. So it's just so thrilling to see this. And again, we had many other reports like this, but this is what I would say is in the upper 1/3 or so of our respondents. So just to summarize this study that we did, we found major abnormalities in autism: low levels of certain vitamins, low levels of ATP, NADH, the active form of vitamin B3, low glutathione, high oxidative stress, impaired methylation, extremely low sulfate, low levels of neurotransmitters, most of them an abnormal dopamine, low plasma amino acids. A subset had low iodine, most had low lithium, and high toxic metals. And the supplement improved almost all of these. It just exceeded our expectations. I thought we'd have to do a treatment study with amino acids also, but surprisingly, giving the vitamin mineral supplement seemed to improve indirectly digestion and absorption of amino acids. The supplement significantly improves certain behavioral symptoms, but it's interesting, the biochemistry changes were greater. So we think what was going on is the supplement was improving health and the ability to learn. We think longer time was needed to gain abilities. But basically, in terms of major behavioral changes, the average score, so averaging over all symptoms, and especially improvements in receptive language, hyperactivity, tantruming, and just overall functioning. And it's very important to point out the variation in severity of autism, strongly associated with vitamins, with minerals, with amino acids, and toxic metals. So all of these are important for treating autism. So based on this study, we've made a number of formulation improvements. We increased some nutrients that we needed more of. A few we were giving a little too much. And we also added some new ones like carnitine and vitamin K that we believe are important. With this new formulation, we did a whole nother study, and I've given a whole talk on this, so I'm just going to summarize it very briefly. We included our vitamin mineral supplement in a study of 6 different nutritional interventions for autism, and we found many improvements over the course of 12 months. 7-point gain in nonverbal IQ, developmental age increased 18 months in the treatment group versus only 4 months in the non-treatment group. The 2 treatments the families rated the most important were the vitamin mineral supplement and the fish oil. There's a typo there. I apologize. 89%, not 8%, 89% of the participants reported that the vitamin mineral supplement was helpful to them. So it won't help everyone. We believe it's strongly worth a try for 2 to 3 months to see if it benefits. If we looked at all of the different measures in that study, orange is the treatment group, green is the non-treatment group. On every measure we looked at in this study, many different questionnaires, the treatment group outperformed the non-treatment group. This is not a cure, but this is about a 20% improvement across the board in many, many different markers of behavior, language, development, etc. Based on that research, I then founded a nonprofit, the Autism Nutrition Research Center, to provide information to families and to distribute the vitamin mineral supplement that's based on our research. Again, a disclaimer, I am the president, but I serve as a volunteer. I don't receive any salary or royalties. I donate my time to try to make the highest quality supplement that I can. It's what I've been giving my daughter for many years now. So it's available from our website, autismnrc.org, and so you can order it from there if you wish. We also have, based on that 12-month study I just mentioned, we recommend, in addition to starting with our vitamin mineral supplement, we recommend adding on fish oil and then carnitine, trying that for some children. Not everyone needs it, but about half to 2/3 of kids with autism seem to benefit from high-dose carnitine. There's some in ANRC, but some kids need much more. And going on a healthy allergen-free diet. And I want to emphasize healthy, that's often ignored. So it doesn't mean going from eating cookies to eating gluten-free cookies. It means going from eating cookies to eating vegetables and fruit. You know, broccoli is a radical treatment for autism, okay? So eat your fruits and vegetables. That's how our bodies are designed to get vitamins and minerals. So the full protocol is available for free at our website. It gives detailed instructions how to phase these in gradually. So one at a time, so that way you can know which one is helping. And in the rare case that one might cause a problem, then you can still try the others. So I want to thank the many families who have participated in our studies. Again, one of the largest studies done for treatments for autism. Many thanks to ARI, which has inspired me for many years to do this work. Our annual fundraiser and Legacy Foundation, and also 2 labs that help with the laboratory measurements. So with that, I'm going to pause. I think I'll leave it on this page and take questions.
Well, thank you, Jim. That was just unbelievably wonderful. And before I go on with the questions, I want to just let people know that the Autism Research Coalition has recently partnered with the Brain Foundation, and this is to encourage research such as Dr. Adams so that we can continue to gain more information about what works for making our kids healthier and better functioning. So you can make a tax-deductible donation. There's a banner right now at brainfoundation.org, donate, and that will help benefit the Autism Research Coalition. So there's all kinds of questions that we have. I know you said that there is more information on your website, but can you tell us just briefly, one at a time, the supplements were introduced one at a time? Were they put in food? Were they in capsules? Were they liquid? They were injected? How were they given to the kids? And how did you determine the sequence of which one's first?
Right. So we, in our 12-month study, and what we recommend now is starting with the vitamin mineral supplement because it contains so many nutrients. I mean, over 30 essential vitamins and minerals. Each one is essential for human life. So we start with that. We gradually phase it in over 4 weeks, and we give very detailed instructions based on body weight. It's available in both capsule and powder form. So capsules are better if children can swallow capsules. If they can't, we have a pill swallowing video on our website to help you with that. But if they take the powder, if they cannot swallow capsules, the powder is strong tasting. This is not candy. This is a vitamin mineral supplement. And so what we recommend is taking a sip of pure juice and then a juice mixed with the vitamin mineral supplement powder, and then a sip of pure juice right after that. So just a quick chaser, a quick drink. You can get it down very quickly. Just an ounce of liquid is enough. And that works well. As I mentioned, we had almost everyone in our study was able to get it down either by capsules or by liquid. And then the fish oil, you can take fish oil capsules, or you can also break the capsules open into a liquid. With fish oil, we used a product from Nordic Naturals that I like in general. I believe they're one of several companies that make high quality products. But it's very important to just smell the fish oil. So break open a fish oil capsule and smell it. If it smells bad, it is bad. Your nose is very, very sensitive to the quality of fish oil. And so just smell the oil. It should have a very mild odor, like a mild salad oil. If it has a strong fishy odor, that's a problem. And so we recommend storing it refrigerated. And there are big differences in how it's processed. So Nordic Naturals is one company we like, but there are some other companies too that make high quality fish oil products. Carnitine, we did a separate study I didn't have time to talk about, in which we gave very high doses of carnitine, about up to 2 grams a day in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study. And we found it was significantly beneficial to about half of kids with autism. But it was important to gradually increase. If you do it a high dose right at the start, it can cause some stomach upset. You can take it in capsule form or in a pill form, or powder form, either way, and just gradually increase it. Carnitine is available in your diet only really in 2 foods: in beef products, cows, and in pork products, so bacon and sausage. If you don't eat 2 to 3 servings of beef a week, so hamburgers, steak, if you're not eating those, there's a very good chance that you're low in carnitine. Your body can make carnitine, but kids with autism seem not to be able to make enough. We had one extraordinary girl who was very low carnitine. She'd never ate beef or pork. And once she started it, she had a burst in energy level, improved intellectual functioning. And the healthy diet, we list last just because it's one of the hardest things for parents to do. But I think it's one of the most important. Eat your broccoli, eat your cabbage, those green leafy vegetables. But the best way to think of it is you want a rainbow of colors. You want a wide variety of vegetables, because that's the best way to make sure you're getting a wide variety of all the vitamins, all the minerals that you need. So I hope that answers the question.
That's fantastic. And you've mentioned broccoli a couple of times. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, who's a hero of mine, he loves broccoli sprouts, which are really intensified broccoli. So
that's a whole nother supplement one could consider, and there's growing evidence on sulforaphane, which is an extract of broccoli. And so that also seems like a promising thing to consider. So this protocol is just what I recommend is the basics of nutrition, the foundation, and then special treatments like sulforaphane is one of a number of treatments I'd then consider afterwards that I think makes good sense.
So there's a couple questions about the genetics of, and did you look at the genetics of any of your subjects, whether they had mutations and how that affected their response to the supplementation?
Yeah, at the time, we did not have easy access to looking at the genetics. We do know that MTHFR mutations are slightly higher in children with autism, but they're also pretty common in the general population as well. So, but that is why we use folinic acid rather than folic acid. And so we think that's very important. And I could go on about the importance of folinic acid, including during pregnancy. But the short answer to the question is no, we were using a broad spectrum treatment. I think that's the right way to go. We still have a lot more to learn about how genetics are going to help us with optimizing diet.
My next question was going to be about the folinic acid versus the folic acid, and you answered that. So the other really major impression was the underdosing of so many kids, and that you recognize that, especially for your older, heavier subjects, and especially with vitamin D. How can you talk a little bit about how families should tweak this based on weight, and especially with vitamin D? How high can you go?
Yeah, so we have measured, as I said, now through several studies, we've measured the levels, and I think we have a pretty good optimal formulation for most children. The exceptions that I would say is that some children need iron, especially very young children, and girls, once they hit puberty, they may need extra iron. About 11% of girls are iron deficient. About 7% of children, boys and girls under age of 5, are iron deficient, full-blown anemia. And so it's important to check iron levels. Vitamin D is a really bad problem. About 60% of the general population has low levels of vitamin D. And I think the best way to know, you can measure it, but a simple test is look at a substantial amount of your skin on your arms and legs. Are you well tanned? And if you're not well tanned, you're probably not getting enough vitamin D. And so vitamin D, we just did a study on it for COVID, showing that vitamin D is very important in regulating the immune system and helping the immune system both reduce the risk of COVID and reduce the severity of COVID. And a number of other studies showing that as well. Vitamin D is helpful for most respiratory viruses. So the amount that we give is about 2,500 IUs for a small child, 5,000 for an adult. And you could certainly go higher than that in most cases. But if you want to go higher, I'd suggest measuring vitamin D levels and then aiming for about 40 or so nanograms per ml.
And vitamin D, does it not have a synergistic effect with vitamin K? And so your low K is expected with low D.
Well, they have quite different functions, actually. So vitamin K is primarily needed for coagulation of your blood, and you get vitamin K in very different ways, primarily from both your gut bacteria and your diet. There's vitamin D you get primarily from sunlight. It's the sunshine vitamin. So they really have quite different functions, but they are both fat soluble. So that's why it's important when you, if you're eating foods, you need to be eating some of these oils as well that will help improve those absorption of those.
Maybe I missed it, but was a zinc supplement included in your protocol?
Oh, yes. So we recommend including zinc at above the RDA levels. So in general, you can say our vitamin mineral supplement is relatively high strength, and that's why we want people to gradually increase it. About a quarter of kids with autism don't need to go to the full strength, so you can just gauge it by seeing the reaction. If you see a little bit of increased hyperactivity or behavioral problems, you can go to a slightly lower dose. Most children and adults do best in the full dose. A few children, about a quarter of them, do better on half to 3/4 of the dose. We had this one child who was on 10 times the dose by mistake, and they were doing just super. I mean, again, it's a tribute to how safe vitamin mineral supplements can be in general, but you want to be cautious long term with certain vitamins and certain minerals.
And it was very curious to me that you chose not to supplement copper. And I thought about the research of Dr. Bill Walsh when he was looking at the high copper in many of his patients, and then that zinc copper ratio. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we found zinc levels were not necessarily different in children with autism, but we found that copper levels tended to be a little bit high. There's been a lot of misinformation about zinc being low in autism, in that in a study we did, we measured zinc levels with LabCorp, one of the biggest labs in the country. And we found that every child with autism had low zinc, and so did every typical child. They just had a bad reference range for children. So unfortunately, that's fooled most of the country, most of the researchers and physicians, because they rely on labs having good reference ranges. So
Right.
I think is important, but I think that people have been fooled by bad reference ranges for zinc that LabCorp had and maybe some other labs had. So when we measured zinc, it was not abnormal in autism, but that's when we measured in blood, and blood is not the best way to measure it. Some other studies have looked at it in nails, and they do see differences. So there's some difference there, but in general, zinc is important for the immune system, and we do think it's important to give a significant amount.
And how was the ATP measured? Someone wanted to know how that was measured.
Yeah, we used a specialty lab. Almost all the measurements were done, I think I referenced them, by Health Diagnostics. And so they're one of the few labs in the country that was able to measure that.
Okay, and then there were a couple questions about Ricky in your study. Was he nonverbal when you started? And did you stop the behavioral therapies when you were doing this study, or did they continue on?
So Ricky had some limited language, but it was primarily echolalia. So it was mostly not functional. And as I mentioned, it rapidly changed to becoming normal full sentences. So it was just delightful to see. In all of our studies, we try to make sure nothing changes except the supplement. So there were no changes in any medications, diets, or other supplements for 2 months prior to starting the study and for during the study. So we try to be very careful about that to make sure nothing else is interfering with the science.
Okay, and a question about the lithium. You know the work of the Geyers, and what happened to them when they started supplementing lithium. What form of lithium did you use, and how did you decide how to administer that?
Yeah, so I want to point out that lithium, you normally get some lithium in your diet every day, along with all the other minerals in your diet. We just found that kids with autism were unusually low in lithium, and so we gave roughly the amount, well, it turned out to be roughly twice the amount you would get through a normal diet. So this is 100 times lower than when lithium is used as a psychiatric medication. So I just want to be clear, we're talking not about megadose lithium, which would be 100 times higher. We're talking about very modest amounts of lithium to prevent deficiency. Low lithium is associated with a wide range of behavioral problems, higher rates of homicide, so people committing murder with low lithium levels, a wide range of behavioral issues. And so it does seem to play important functions in the body. We know that in animals that are on lithium deficient diets, they develop an impaired immune system. So lithium does seem to be important, and we recommend giving a very small amount, enough to boost you into a normal, safe range.
In what form?
We use lithium orotate. That turned out to be a very well-absorbed form.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Adams, this has been most informative. Congratulations on the success of this study. It's going to help so many children. And what do you have planned for next?
Well, we're doing another study of our vitamin supplement right now. As I said, we made some changes to it, and now we're enrolling 20 children in that study, and we want to look in more detail at mitochondrial functioning and a number of other biomarkers that we think will improve. So we're continuing to try to tweak this formulation to improve it more, but already we're pleased that it helps many, not every child, but seems to help about 89% of children with autism now.
That's terrific. And the supplement itself is, and the protocol are available on your website, right?
Yes, it's all available on the website of our nonprofit, autismnrc.org.
Terrific. Well, thank you again. This is the second time you've appeared with us, and we always learn so much from you, and we're grateful for all the work that you've done. And it's wonderful seeing you again. Thank you again.
Thanks very much for having me.
You're welcome. Good luck to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.